Good day. Welcome to Volunteer Gardening Training 102, Weeds, Shoots, and Flowers. If you are a part of our series, I hope you will come back and look up Soil, Water, and Sun by Sullivan Renaissance, Volunteer Gardening Training 101, and stay tuned for Part 3, Designing, Digging, and Delegating. Today we're going to talk about weeds, shoots, and flowers, beginning with weeds. There are many different weeds. They could be in your lawn, therefore they could go into your garden being spread by wind, animals, or just rain as well. And here's just a sampling of what you might find in your garden. Anything from mint to the different grasses, quackgrass, foxtail, to some large leafed weeds like dock, or some pretty things like lady's thumbs, the knotweed. Crabgrass is one that we're all familiar with. It's a summer annual and it crawls on the ground like a crab does. It is an annual and it goes to seed in 1 year, so you definitely want to make sure that you get it out first thing in the spring and you could solve your problem. Dandelion we're all familiar with. It actually is a very beneficial plant that attracts moths and butterflies and honeybees first thing in the spring. But as you can see, it spreads very easily by the wind and comes up all over. So either make a dandelion salad and appreciate it, or dig it out with an asparagus knife. Bindweed looks like morning glory, but it's not with its pretty white flowers. Its roots can go several feet down into the ground and get strongly ensconced into your garden. So make sure that you're pulling this out completely. Chickweed, it's called mouse-eared chickweed because its leaves are as small as a mouse ear, is also an annual that's easy to pull out. You want to make sure that you get it before it starts flowering, as with most weeds, because flowers make seeds and seeds make weeds. Ground ivy is also called creeping Charlie. Everywhere this weed stem touches the ground, it roots at two leaves that connect, so make sure that you pull ground ivy out of the ground. Canada thistle is spread by its seeds. Also, birds love those seeds and spread it as well. And it's itchy and it's hard to pull, and you have to make sure that you have leather gloves on, but you definitely want to get this one out. Quackgrass, you can see by this visual that it spreads underground, and it also spreads by seed. Pull that quackgrass and get all of the shoots that come from underground. Johnson grass is a bit taller. If you look at our different grassy weeds, they all have different types of seed heads. Let's go back to quackgrass, look at that seed head, and now let's look at Johnson grass and its seed head. These are great identifying features for grasses in general. Garlic mustard is the scourge of our wildflower gardens, and it likes to grow right in between the area that is shade and sun. It is a biennial, getting its leaves the first year and then flowers and seeds the second. So if you can get this plant under control year 1, then you don't have year 2 with flowers and seeds to cause a problem that's everlasting. And here's what the flower looks like. And here it is. It flowers while it's setting seeds. That's why it's so important to get it quickly. Nutsedge is not a grass. It's actually a sedge, a type of plant with sawtooth type edges on its leaves. You want to pull this out, but it does have little nutlets on its roots, as you can see here. So you may be pulling it, but leaving the nuts behind. Groundsel is another one that we'll find in late June and early July. And you can see that, like dandelion, it has these seeds that can easily be blown in the air, and so it can easily travel many feet. Get this one before those seeds ripen. There are several different vetches, one brought to us for erosion on roadsides. On the left, crown vetch, which has escaped where it was originally planted and really can outcompete any other plant trying to grow in its way. And then there are several other vetches that really can take over quickly, so you want to make sure you get them out. And then our beloved haha poison ivy on the lower left, leaves of 3, let them be. When they first come out, they're shiny and reddish green. You can see the poison ivy does have a flower. You can also see, I'm pointing out the petiole, which is the petiole that actually holds the one of 3 leaves, the center leaf, in. It's always misidentified, and people think that Virginia creeper is poison ivy, but you can see that that has 5 leaflets, and it does not have a petiole. but they both make flowers and they both make seeds. Japanese knotweed. Yes, it can be larger than a man. Unfortunately, the honeybees do love it, and we don't want to take away their food sources, but this will become a very dominant weed anywhere. Go to Livingston Manor and you will see what I mean in any of the parks. So please be sure to weaken this plant by mowing it, cutting it down, mowing it, cutting it down. It's going to take 3 years to do this, but you can weaken it till it disappears. Now, let's talk about shoots and how we deal with those. The first shoot that comes to mind to me is pruning. So tree care is very important, and I want to go quickly on the left-hand side of this visual to show you how to properly mulch. We must get rid of the Vesuvius mulching that's going on all over the world. We do not have to put mulch up along the main trunk of the tree. That's actually going to rot the bark and kill the tree within 10 years. May look nice now, but mulch mountains should not be done. So we want to make sure, if you look on the right, that we're mulching wide and not deep. We want to mulch as wide as the crown of the tree goes out. And we do want to have at least 2 to 3 inches of mulch. And this way you will not get weeds competing, you will not get grass competing with the tree roots in that area, and that is the proper way to do it. So you go and tell everybody that's the way. These are the tools that you would use for pruning. You can see some are for larger cuts. In the center, right underneath the word pruning, we have pruning saws that are there for things that are 1.5 to 2 inches or larger. On the lower left-hand side, we have a Felco, and then we have long-handled loppers for places we can't reach, and then we have head shears, and then we have a chainsaw that is only for takedowns. So this is what you do prune. You can see sucker growth that reaches up to heaven should be cut out up in the center at 12 o'clock. If we go to the right, deadwood at any time that can be pruned. If you see silly bunchy growth from old prunings, prune that back to something that looks good. Weak and narrow crotches need to come out. Branch stubs should not be left. It should be cut back to the main branch. Any closely spaced branches will include themselves together in the future. You want to make sure that you make a decision which one to cut out. I like to cut out the center one and leave the outside. And of course, any rubbing or overlapping branches should come out. The best time to prune is between mid-February and mid-April, or any time you have dead wood or broken branches. And with nursery trees that first come out, you want to make sure that you have a strong leader. And here you can see correct pruning on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, just showing you what to prune again. Another thing that we take care of with shoots is deadheading, so that we have more flowers in our gardens. So you can see that in cut number 1 on the right hand side, you want to cut the flower as it's starting to fade right above 2 leaves, and then you will have more leaves coming from that in future growth. So we have lateral buds, we have terminal buds, and we're actually cutting off that terminal bud when we deadhead, the terminal flower head when we deadhead. And you can pinch to remove succulent green growth as well. And here we're showing back just a green plant and how we're cutting it back to make it bushy and fuller, therefore having more flowers. So you want to make sure that you plant the right plant in the right place, and you want to look at the climate and weather that we have. We're zone 5 for the most part here in Sullivan County. We do have temperature extremes in the summertime, in the spring, in the fall, and even in the winter. You want to see what the moisture conditions are where you are planting. Is it wet? Is it dry? Do you have full sun? Are you under a high tree canopy? Are you exposed to wind? Does the garden face north or south, east or west? So consider that cold hardiness and heat tolerance, zone 5, and heat tolerance is a new map that everyone needs to get used to as we move into climate change more. It is our hot summers that are starting to affect some of the plants that enjoyed colder conditions in the past. So we want to look to native plants that can actually handle some of these strange weather conditions much better than some of the exotic plants that we plant for Zone 5. We also want to increase our wildlife habitat by increasing the pollinators that come to visit and small mammals that keep all the other insects in check. And we also want to look for plants that require less maintenance once established and are drought tolerant, and that's definitely our natives. And then we have to deal with deer that eat everything, but they don't eat bee balm. Great plant. We're gonna whiz through these, and we're gonna show you some other great natives. Eastern redbud, a small ornamental tree. It has beautiful heart-shaped leaves. It flowers on its wood in early spring, then develops these pods with seeds, and has great fall color as well. Rose of Sharon, which is one of our Renaissance plants. We strongly suggest that you buy the sterile hybrids and don't accept seedlings from friends because those are not sterile hybrids. They won't then become an invasive weed in our countrysides. How about edibles like common persimmon? Love the bark, beautiful little fragrant flower, and then delicious fruit. The Kousa dogwood, also in our Renaissance collection. To the left, you can see that edible fruit it gets, and then to the right, the pretty flowers that bloom in June after the leaves appear. Green hawthorn, winter king, is also a Sullivan Renaissance collection plant, and it gets lovely flowers in the spring. And there's a close-up, and here are the fall fruit that wildlife just love. American holly should be planted more. A great fruit plant for wildlife, all different types of songbirds. Yes, it does have prickly leaves, and hopefully the deer don't like to eat that in your yard. Siberian cypress, microbiota, is one of our Sullivan Renaissance plants. One plant will spread to 6 feet around. It is an evergreen conifer, therefore that in the winter it will turn a purplish color, and then as soon as it warms up in the spring, green again. Eastern red cedar is a great native plant. Of course, we made posts and fence posts and all from it in the past. You can see it could take many different types of conditions, including high and dry, as in roadside. It gets lovely berries, and in the center is a very cool disease that doesn't kill it, but it's called cedar apple rust. And if you ever see this again on a tree, you'll know it's a red cedar, and you know it's the rust disease. Viking, black chokeberry, aronia, is a great wildlife plant, great native. You can see the beautiful flowers it gets, the black fruit, and then the red foliage. Inkberry is another evergreen, and it gets lovely white flowers in spring, black berries. Densa is the cultivar that we suggest. Nine bark has many different types of nine barks on the market now. We have summer wine, we have lady in red, we have coppertina, and here's my favorite, coppertina. Just look at these different varieties. Great plant. Southern arrowwood is another one that you should consider. This is a viburnum. We do have a problem with viburnum beetle, but hopefully we are keeping that in check right now. Look at the fruit that viburnum gets. Look at those lovely shiny green leaves with the veins that are so prominent. Love the flower. American wisteria is not like the Chinese or Japanese wisteria. It is not invasive. It's a smaller plant, smaller flowers, but definitely one to look into. We'll move into some perennials now. Amsonia, blue star, gets beautiful blue flowers in the spring. Anise hyssop, many different varieties. Some have yellow leaves and purple flowers. It smells like anise when you rub the leaves. You can cut those leaves up, put them in a fruit salad. They're edible. Baptisia, great native plant, and look at the beautiful blue flowers, and it gets these black rattle type of seed pods in the fall. Nepeta, catmint, we have all over our plantings now because we know it's a good tough plant. Bidens is one of our Renaissance collection plants. It's an annual and gives you a lovely yellow flower throughout the summer with small needle-like leaves. Calibrachoa, an annual that's great for hanging baskets, in the ground, window boxes. It's like a mini petunia. We love coleus, and fishnet stockings is just one of the many different leaf types that you can find to add as an annual in your plantings. Cleome Senorita Rosalita is one of our Renaissance collection plants. It is an annual and it is sterile, so it won't reseed. So let's look at Zinnia profusion, another Renaissance collection plant. This person obviously loves it because they have it all over their front yard. Just a great drought-tolerant annual. New Guinea impatiens is what we're suggesting people plant, as our regular impatiens now is dying from a disease in the ground called downy mildew. So look to the New Guinea impatiens, particularly the sun patiens, which will grow in sun or shade and are get to be about 2 feet high. Salvia, this is Mystic Spires Blue. This is one of our Sullivan Renaissance collection plants, tall and very effective. Fairy Fan Flower Scaevola, another Renaissance collection plant that comes in white, pink, or purple. Dragonwing Begonia, another Renaissance collection plant. Here you can see it as a hanging basket and in the ground as a bedding plant, a necklace around this garden. Sneezeweed Helenium, another Renaissance collection plant, great perennial that will do well in your gardens. Russian sage stands tall as a Renaissance collection plant. The leaner the soil, the taller it'll stand up. And you can see it really gives you some height and status in the garden. Geranium Roseanne, another Sullivan Renaissance winner, and she blooms from June to frost with these beautiful purple-blue flowers. Dwarf Fountain Grass Hamlin will give you an ornamental grass with a pretty feathery seed head to it. It only gets 2 feet tall, so it's not huge like some of the other ornamental grasses we have in our landscapes, and very effective as a background or different texture in your flower beds. Heuchera, the old-fashioned coral bells, come in many, many different leaf forms now. In fact, there's probably one being created as I speak. So look to the coral bells for color all season long and actually into early spring and winter, as is just a perennial that has a tendency to keep those leaves during the winter. And it will survive in a container in the winter as well. And here's Heucherella, which is a cross between Heuchera and Tiarella, and this is a spreading ground cover that is quite lovely, perennial. Golden Sedge Evergold is one of our Renaissance collection plants, and this will give you some form and function, not in a flowering plant, but in a foliage plant in your garden. Use it in the front of the border. Pennsylvania sedge is another great native sedge that you may want to consider, and here you don't even need a lawn. Just have a low-mow grass or no-mow grass. Canadian ginger is the ground cover you see here on the bottom, and then you can see a close-up of its flowers as the inset in this picture. And what's growing above it is actually a vine that loves shade called Schizophragma. And here's Canadian ginger growing in the wild. Dog violet or Labrador violet is another great perennial that will reseed, and in tough places this may be an answer for you. This is underneath an overhang where it's growing in gravel. Native Pachysandra is much nicer than the Japanese Wacky Packy. Consider growing this in the shade. Mayapple is another native that will grow in the shade, a little bit taller, getting to be about 18 inches to 2 feet tall. The fruit is poisonous until it's fully ripe, so please don't eat it, but the deer don't eat it either. Creeping Phlox is the blue flower in here. Of course, I think we're all looking at the yellow lady slipper in the center, but Creeping Phlox is a great native ground cover. Moss Phlox, another one that loves full sun, and they also call this Creeping Phlox. Sweet woodruff, Gallium, is one of our Renaissance collection plants. It gets little white flowers, and it's deer resistant, and they make May wine from it. And here we have Lamium, which is another great Renaissance collection plant, and the flower colors are white, purple, blue, and then you also have colored leaves. On the lower left-hand side is Anna Greenaway. So think about different plants that you could put in your containers. Here we have a red ornamental grass with petunia, with scaevola, and a great mix of plants. And consider putting some tropicals in there. We have an alocasia in this plant. We have some of our evergold sedges you can see with the calibrachoa, a licorice plant, and it's taller than this man, who happens to be my husband, John. And in the town of Neversink, they are using many mixed plants in their hanging baskets. There are over 100 that line Neversink as you come into town. Please go and see their show. Window boxes are a great way to brighten the landscape, particularly when you may have an ugly fence or wall that needs a little brightening. Here's an idea for you. And then in a mixed garden, make sure that you do use our tried and true Renaissance plants. And here you can see Senorita Rosalita Cleome in the background, and you can see Mystic Spires Salvia, and you can see the Evergold Sedge, and Biden's, there it is. And here is a beautiful planting of ornamental grasses and sedges and the Russian sage. So consider natives. Here's Columbine, and in a mass along the highway, this is going to make an impression. So if you're going any more than 25, 30 miles per hour, consider planting the same plant en masse. And when you have a small walk-by pedestrian planting, you can do a mix of a lot of different colors and plants. So our volunteers are what it's all about. Plant it well, plant it right, care for it the first year every week with an inch of water if we don't get it. Second year, an inch of water every 2 weeks. Third year, an inch of water every 3 weeks. Make sure that you mulch. Make sure that you have volunteers that are going to come out and weed for you, and you will have a beautiful planting that will last a long time. So let's grow community. We have the Sullivan Renaissance Volunteer Corps that is running May through September, but you can sign up anytime. And here you can see our new Corps for 2013. They're visiting places, they're helping all over. So you just need to contact us and get involved. Volunteer at sullivanrenaissance.org or call us at 845-295-2405. Have a great day.